vote again. I just can't wait till we all vote again. With pen and paper, voter ID in our hands. I can't wait till we all vote again. Let's all vote again. Those mail-in ballots should have never been. And all the dead votes coming in at 3 a.m. I can't wait till we all vote again. Let's all vote again. Like a band of patriots, we will count the right way. We're the best of fans, resisting lies and fighting for truth our way and God's way. Let's all vote again. I just can't wait till we all vote again. With pen and paper, voter ID in our hand. I can't wait till we all vote again. God bless America.
Wow. So you heard it here first. Vote early and vote often from Uncle Sam.
I'm on, right? Okay. I'm Tamara Favorito, and I'd like to welcome you to Voter GA's Show Us the Ballots press conference. Today, Garland Favorito will walk you through the chronology of all that Voter GA and others have done to try to see the Fulton County 2020 actual ballots. He'll take you all the way back to November of 2020. Then we'll play some clips of Rob Pitts, the chairman of Fulton County Commission, saying that Fulton has complied with everything and received a clean bill of health. Garland will show you the evidence that says that is not at all the case. He'll talk about the cover-up that's been underway for 5 years, and finally, what needs to happen next. After that, I'll come back up, give you some information about Voter GA, and then we'll take questions, starting with live stream media, then in-person media, and finally, the live stream audience. Now, we're live streaming today from several platforms, and we'll be monitoring the chats on Voter GA's Rumble and X channels. So if you're watching online and you have a question, make your way to either Rumble or X and put your question in the chat.
Introduce yourself beginning, so we have the list right at the beginning. Tell us who you are again.
And start over, or just that?
No, we just missed the beginning. Just tell us who you are. We heard the rest.
I'm Tamara Favorito. So then after the Q&A, I'll come back up to close us out with the latest update on Tina Peters and pray for her. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. Garland Favorito is co-founder of Voter GA and a career information technology professional with over 40 years of experience in computer programming, data administration, business systems analysis, internet systems design, and system development technology. And he finished up his career with 13 years of cybersecurity experience developing and implementing online banking applications for 1.5 million customers for leading financial institutions. And now he has more than 20 years of experience in voting system technology research and election integrity. He learned in the year 2000 that electronic voting systems were coming to America, and he understood how vulnerable they would be to manipulation. So he wrote his first letter to the Secretary of State in 2002, warning about these systems. But she didn't listen and purchased the Diebold unverifiable paperless voting system. So Garland has been fighting for election integrity and getting rid of the machines ever since. Now I'll turn it over to Garland.
All right. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you. So, as you can see from our cartoon today, there's a lot of entities and individuals who would like to see the Fulton County 2020 ballots. A lot of questions over the election. They're not all necessarily electronic. So here are some of the folks who are looking to see the ballots for the 2020 election. First of all, you've got Harrison Floyd in a criminal case over there, as well as myself in a civil case. We have two lawsuits we're going to tell you about. The original lawsuit that Tamara talked about, the Fulton County counterfeit ballot lawsuit, but also I have an open records request lawsuit as well. In addition, Caroline Jeffords has a kind of a sister case. We're kind of identical there. So there's actually 3 civil suits and 1 criminal case, all looking for the 2020 election ballots. Top that off, the state election board subpoenaed the Fulton County 2020 election ballots recently. We'll tell you about that. And as you might have heard, the Department of Justice, both divisions, the criminal division and the civil division, want the Fulton County 2020 election ballots. That's 7 different entities and organizations, and we're all saying the same thing. Show us the ballots, because there is a controversy and potential criminal activity involved in the 2020 election in Fulton County. So what I want to do is to walk through as fast as I can the chronology, and that's going to take a while because there's a lot of chronology there. Yes. And I want to talk a little bit about the cover-up and then a call to action. As you can see down here, Rob Pitts is the chairman of the commission, says from his point of view, he's complied. So we're going to play a couple of clips from a recent interview that he did with Fox 5, which was nothing more than a puff piece that tried to basically cover up the reality of what we're going to show you today. Now, before I get started, I do want to say that I know Chairman Pitts, and I've liked him for a long time. I actually worked with him to help remove the Georgia 400 toll here in Atlanta a while back, and that's a highway for those of you from out of state. Georgia 400 was the only toll road in the state of Georgia, and it's no longer. So we are toll-free here in Georgia. I know some of you up in New Jersey and other parts are jealous about that. So anyway, moving on, I'm going to start right at the beginning. November 3rd, Fulton County conducts the election, and what most people don't know is my vote for a third-party presidential candidate was never counted in that race. Fulton County had 0 votes for that candidate. I'm in the Constitution Party. I voted for our candidate was Don Blankenship at the time. But Fulton County failed to count any votes for him, including my own. So I am an injured party, and that's probably about the most ultimate injured party you could have in an election case. Fast forward to November 14th. The Secretary of State ordered an audit because of the closeness of the race. You remember it was decided by 11,779 votes, and the Secretary of State was mandated to audit a race. He chose the presidential race and conducted a full hand count audit. To his credit, that was the right thing to do, but a few things went wrong after that. The senior poll managers, and I was there the day that they found the counterfeit ballots during the hand count. How do we know that they're counterfeit? There was no mail crease. They were mail-in ballots, but they weren't creased from being mailed. They were toner copied. They were on unusual paper stock, and they were voted the same way down ballot for dozens of ballots in a row. So clearly, obviously, they were counterfeit ballots. So I filed an open records request to view the absentee ballots prior to certification and sealing and delivery of the ballots to the clerk while they're still available. Once they go to the clerk, they're sealed for 2 years under 21-500 here in Georgia law. On December 23rd, we filed the lawsuit. It was what we call the Equal Protection and Due Process lawsuit, saying that our votes were diluted by counterfeit ballots coming into the election results. Pretty common sense. You don't have to be a judge or an attorney to understand that. And the court assigned this case, the court system assigned it to Judge Rachel Carnsale. Remember that. We'll come back to that in a minute. Chief Judge Brasher moved the case out of the district to Judge Brian Amara because it wasn't he considered it to be an election matter. Now, this was not an election challenge because it was too late to be an election challenge. But nevertheless, he moved it there. We thought that was a good idea to get it out of Fulton County. We did not challenge that. We let it ride. I mentioned earlier that I had filed an open records request for the ballots. Well, I got a reply finally from Attorney Rosenberg, who was at that time the county attorney for Fulton County, and he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't receive your December 3 request until December 28th, and now the ballots are sealed pursuant to 21-500. I'm sorry, we can't give them to you." Yeah. Well, we went to court. Judge Amaro grants the temporary injunction to preserve the ballots. And then Judge Amaro finds that Rosenberg's response was untimely, deficient, and in violation of the Open Records Act, and we have gotten no compensation for that whatsoever, but at least we did get a ruling in our favor, and we got, in fact, 7 favorable rulings in this period of time under Judge Amaro. So on April 2, though, the plot thickened because Secretary Ravensburger and A.G. Carr filed an amicus brief for Fulton County on behalf of Fulton County to prevent us from looking at the ballots. Now, let that sink in for a minute. You've got the alleged Republican Secretary of State and Attorney General who are now running for governor. They're saying that we cannot look at the ballots for the 2020 election. We would be committing felony. They even said that the judge would be committing a felony. Absurd proposition. And can you imagine what that's going to be like if one of these people becomes governor? Imagine the amount of corruption that you're going to have. Nevertheless, on April 19th, we filed our reply, and our reply showed that there was a half a dozen major false arguments in the brief that they had filed, at least a half a dozen or so. There's an article about this thanks to Georgia Record and CD Media. They've got a complete article documenting point by point all the false information. That brief was signed by the Assistant Attorney General Charlie McGowan, who is now the legal counsel for the Secretary of State, Brad Ravensburger. Well, the judge didn't buy any of this. Judge Amaro didn't buy it. He said, okay, we're still going to unseal the ballots. On May 21st, we celebrated for the order that where he ruled that he would unseal the ballots. We were about to inspect the ballots and then had a complete inspection plan that even Fulton County couldn't really disagree with. But suddenly, Fulton hires criminal defense attorneys just to prevent us from seeing the ballots. Now, if the county is hiring criminal defense attorneys just to in a civil case, where we just simply want to see the ballots, it seems to me that most people could logically deduce that there was criminal activity. Yes. Otherwise, why would you need two of the most prominent criminal defense attorneys in the city? On June 24th, the AJC falsely reported that our case was thrown out. It wasn't thrown out, or maybe they had an interesting premonition or advance notice. But on September 20th, Judge Amaro is now seems to want to get rid of this case, so he asked the Secretary of State to submit information about the investigations. And they say, oh, we looked at the ballots back on New Year's Eve and there's no issues with the ballots. Right. If that was true, then they have admitted to tampering with the ballots because the ballots were under seal on December 31st, 2020. So now we have the Secretary of State's office involved in the tampering of the ballots, trying to protect Fulton County. This is a collusion of epic proportion. So as a result of all of this, in October, Judge Amaro suddenly decides that the petitioners have no standing. You've heard this argument before. Reversing himself after 10 months, he suddenly decides we have standing. Now, most of you know that standing is something that is decided right in the beginning of a case. You don't go for 10 months, or in the case of the Curling v. Ravensburger case, 7 years. You decide that right off the bat. On February 18th, we filed our brief. We actually filed an appeal notice back in November, but on 2022, February 18th, we put our brief in, and much to our surprise, the appeals court upheld the lower court ruling. And what's going on here? We didn't understand this because we know that that was a false ruling. So we filed a writ of cert to the Georgia Supreme Court. I thought it was interesting to note that the appeals court judge who we believe wrote that ruling, or at least it was on one of the 3-judge panel, got promoted to the Supreme Court right after that ruling. So nevertheless, we applied to the Supreme Court what we call a writ of cert, and the Supreme Court said in Georgia, I'm talking about Georgia Supreme Court, that, yeah, the Fulton petitioners, yes, of course you have standing. You've always had standing to sue a government agency or official who violates the law. And they made this ruling, I want you to understand, unanimously without a hearing. And the only one who didn't rule on it was the guy who was promoted, Mr. Judge Pinson, and he had to basically recuse himself, thank you for the right word there, from that ruling. So the saga continues. The appeals court finally adopts the Georgia Supreme Court ruling. It goes back to the lower court, and then Judge Amaro mysteriously transfers this case to Judge McBurney. Now remember, in the beginning I said that the case was assigned to Judge Carnsale. So once Judge Amaro, who was the out-of-district judge, he should have just taken the case and run with it. We were happy to have him run with it because we thought we would get a rule in our favor. But if not, he should have either given it back to Judge Carnsale or put it back in the pool. Instead, Judge McBurney and Judge Amaro appear to have colluded in order to get Judge McBurney in control of our case. Well, we didn't want that because we knew Judge McBurney had shown partisan behavior in Senator Perdue's case, where he made extrajudicial, extremely biased comments, in fact snide remarks, in regards to Senator David Perdue's case, which was he was looking for the ballots as well. So we decided to file a motion to recuse him. It was obvious that he should have been recused because of those snide remarks and were unnecessary in his ruling. But another Fulton County judge comes along, Judge Melanie Lethbridge, and she finds that, well, there's no conflict here. He can stay on the case. That was December 7th. Notice, so we ate up all of 2023. 2022 was eaten up with decisions. 2023 was eaten up with all of the shell game that the judges played with our case. In 2024, and during this time, Fulton County has proclaimed over and over again, well, we have preserved the ballots, don't worry about it. And specifically, during January through April, a Fulton County attorney told the criminal case judge in Harrison Floyd's case that they had preserved the ballots. A Fulton attorney told the state election board they had preserved it a month or two later. The elections director has told the Fulton County election board twice that they've got the ballots, once in May and then again just recently this month. And the clerk attorney in our case back in July or June, I think it was actually, told Fulton County Civil Judge, yeah, we've got the ballots. But on June 24th, at the same time they were saying they had the ballots, they requested permission to destroy the ballots. Now they're in court, and they say they want to destroy the ballots because they don't have any room, and this was 3 weeks after Fulton County had released a new 600,000 square foot, $30 million warehouse, and they go into court with a straight face and say, no, we don't have room for these ballots. At the same time, they asked, the BRE attorney asked for attorney's fees from us for winning the case in the Georgia Supreme Court for standing. They said they had to incur attorney's fees, we should pay them. You know, everything is backwards. They went into court on this day, June 24th, with a straight face and made these arguments to the judge, and the judge has not ruled on those ridiculous motions since June 24th of 2024. So I turn around and submit an ORR for the ballots. ORR, we're talking about open records request for those of you watching from out on different states. The Fulton Board of Elections replies, that's BRE, there are no responsive documents to your request. Well, wait a minute. Didn't they just tell all of those judges and boards and everything else that they had the ballots? But yet they tell me there's no responsive records. So are they lying to me, or are they lying to all those judges? I'm assuming they're probably lying to me. Not necessarily, I don't think they will lie to all those judges. So I submit an ORR to the clerk of the court, thinking, well, maybe they're saying they don't have them because it's clerk's custody. I get no reply from the clerk, and they end up calling it a duplicate request, which it was not because I had filed it to a different entity. So Tamara and I go down and hand deliver the open records request to the clerk of the court, get it signed, and then I email it to him. And that's how we actually had to deliver an open records request, because they wouldn't take it. So we filed another lawsuit. This one time against the clerk of the court. This is our second lawsuit. So now we have the open records request lawsuit, and we have the original counterfeit ballot lawsuit from December 20. Well, the clerk, and I skipped over a lot of this for the sake of time, but we went back and forth with the clerk of court for about 3 months. The bottom line is that the clerk says, and by the way, we got the law changed while this was going on. So we got the open records request law, or the ballot, or at least for ballots, improved so that ballots will now be public record. Thank you for the General Assembly for delivering that. It explains how to do that. But the clerk replies and says, oh no, it doesn't apply to us. It only applies to the Board of Elections. We don't have to apply to that. And by the way, we don't have any responsive documents anyway. So I file the open records request to the Board of Elections. And after this law has become effective, and they respond again, there are no responsive documents to your request. How can they have been telling all that time the attorneys and the boards and the judges that they have the ballots, and yet now they've told me for the third time that there are no responsive documents to my request? Somebody is lying big time in Fulton County, and we need to find out who it is and why they are lying so badly. So moving over to October 22nd, Judge Ingram cancels our hearing on the day before we were supposed to have it. This is the third hearing that is canceled in 4 months over ballots in different counties. The day before we're supposed to have a hearing. Third in 4 months. This is like a habit that all the Superior Court judges are getting into to avoid having to deal with producing ballots according to Georgia law. We added the Board of Elections as a defendant to the ORR case, and Judge McBurney granted that motion. So that brings us, that's the chronology of what we wanted to background so that you can understand we have done every conceivable thing we could possibly do to get these ballots. It should be a no-brainer, but we want you to know, the rest of America to understand, because this is a federal election and voters all across of America are impacted. We wanted you to know we have done every conceivable thing we can do to get the ballots. So that brings us to an interview. Fox 5, I mentioned earlier, had interviewed Chairman Rob Pitts recently. I want to play several clips for this, but I want you to understand one thing. In June of 2025, and I just realized this recently, that Fox 5 canceled their I-Team. You know, they used to have this investigative reporting thing called I-Team, and they're out of business now, unfortunately. They did a few good reports along the way, but now we have Deidre Dukes, who's gone out on November 7th and interviewed Chairman Pitts. I'm going to play a couple of little clips for you on this.
Complied with everything that we're required to comply with under the law.
So you've heard all that, and now you've heard Chairman Pitts say we have complied, and of course Deidre doesn't ask him a single question like, well, why don't you just give them the ballots? You know, if there's nothing to hide, that would have been the first thing any legitimate journalist would have asked. She does not choose to ask that question for reasons that seem to be obvious that it's a puff piece. So let's bring in the state election board. It's not just us. What about compliance with the state election board? So the state election board found 346 process violations and voted to monitor the 2024 Fulton County elections. They were the only county that was monitored. And in November 5th, they issued subpoenas for the 2020 election records. 10 days later, the election board chair, Sherry Allen, and the elections director, Nadine Williams, filed a motion to quash the state election board's subpoena without commission authority. They had no authority to file back, which is what is equivalent of a lawsuit, against the state election board. It was completely unauthorized. And I didn't hear Rob Pitts talking about that at all, because he has wasted literally millions of dollars of our taxpayer money here in Fulton County trying to cover up the 2020 election. So you might realize, most of you have got in on this part of the story. On July 30th, State Election Board requests state and federal assistance to obtain the Fulton records. They voted for that. We followed that up. We have not said much about this, but we did follow that up with detailed evidence to support that, assist that request, and we made our own request. On August 25th, the DOJ Criminal Division requested the ballots from Judge McBurney. I don't think they've heard anything. We haven't heard a word about that as far as I know. I'm not necessarily privy to all that. But the State Election Board then on September 27th voted to subpoena the ballots, just like we had, in addition to all the records they wanted. And then on October 30th, the DOJ Civil Division issued a 15-day demand letter to Fulton for election records. So that is the background of what has gone on. So we wanted you to know what has actually happened. And that leads us to another clip where Chairman Pitts tells us that we have a clean bill of health.
Baffled as to why there's this fixation on the 2020 elections. 2020 elections are over and done with. They've been reviewed, they've been audited, they've been scrutinized, they've been looked at from top to bottom. We get a clean bill of health.
So it's really simple. First of all, 2 points here. Number one is you can't have secure elections if you don't find out what happened in 2020 and fix it so it never happens again. That is the motive. I don't know why you're baffled about that. I'm baffled that you're baffled. But But let's look at this clean bill of health that Fulton County has. So on July 13th of 2021, we released massive discrepancies in the Fulton County 2020 hand count audit that we were talking about before. This is David Cross's and his team's work. You probably saw it on Tucker Carlson. It got a lot of play. We're grateful to Tucker for carrying that. He did a couple of segments on Fulton County. After we did that, Joe Rossi, many of you know, provided Governor Kemp's office with this evidence, and he took a lot of time to explain it to them. And hats off to Joe Rossi, because on November 15th, Governor Kemp reported his study confirmed the discrepancies that we had originally identified and concluded that the Fulton County hand count audit did not match the original results. Now, I know Secretary of State Ravensburger has told you that a dozen times, maybe 100, and everybody in his office, but Governor Kemp's own study says that it did not match the results, and that is basically a confirmation of our work. Well, what was wrong with the audit? Let's take a look at that. We found, when we did this, 60% of the tally sheets had incorrect totals that did not accurately represent the actual count of the votes from the ballot images. So we looked at the actual counts of the ballot images. We looked at the tally sheets, which the auditors fill out after they count every 100 or so ballots. And there were discrepancies. They didn't add up 60% of the time. Not 6% or 16% or 0.6%, 60%. The majority of them did not match. Well, okay, you could say, well, maybe they're just off a couple. That might be okay. Well, we found that 4,000 ballots were double reported in the audit. So how did it match? If you have 4,000 double reported ballots in the audit, how did that match the original results? We also found 7 falsified tally sheets. I've got an example of one of them up there because it says it's 100-0 for Joe Biden over Donald Trump and Libertarian candidate Joe Jorgensen. Well, I'm sorry, you're not going to find 100-0 in a batch. We got 100-0. We have another 100-0, another 100-0, 200-0, and it's just obviously falsified. We found hundreds of double-scanned, double-counted ballots at that time. We now know that there were actually thousands. I'm going to show you that. The net impact of this audit, based on Joe Rossi's work, 6,000 double votes were counted with a net advantage for Biden of 40-81. In March 7th of 2022, we provided a study. It's up on the voterga.org studies tab, that the Fulton County ballot images were electronically altered before the results were certified. I'm going to repeat that one more time. Fulton County ballot images were electronically altered before the results were certified. In order to have a certified vote, you have to have a ballot image. The ballot is scanned, it's analyzed and turned into a cast vote record. The cast vote record is then tabulated to create a certified vote. That's the way it works. You can't have a certified vote without a ballot image, but we have shown that they were altered, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The complaint was filed by, and again, this was Joe Rossi and Kevin Moncla who found a lot of evidence. They put it all together in one complaint, and they found that there was up to 58,000 certified Fulton votes that have no source justification. And we'll explain a little bit what that means. The Secretary of State's office finally initiated an investigation. That was filed in July 8th of 2022. It took to April 30th, for the Secretary of State to even open an investigation. That was only at the prodding of the governor's attorneys. We had expert witnesses also corroborate the evidence of this complaint, which is known as SB 2023-025. This is the famous complaint that you hear so much about. It is the most important case in history of the State Election Board. It has more violations in it than all of the other cases they've ever looked at since I've been going to board meetings in 20 years. So What do you mean by that? Whoops, went the wrong way. Here's what 2023-025 said. Number one, the allegation. There's 17,724 missing absentee ballot images for certified votes. They have another 128 more missing that are scanned vote records that were never counted. So the total missing is 17,852. In addition, those are the absentee ballots. They have 20,713 in-person ballots that have certified votes with no source tabulator tape. So you have to have a tabulator tape if you have a certified vote. The vote's got to come out of somewhere. It doesn't come out of thin air. We also found, again, thanks to Philip Davis and his ballot integrity analysis of the 2020 election, the total number of double scanned and double counted ballots were 3,930. And then finally, and here's another doozy, they found 17,000 unsourced ballots were batch uploaded and backfilled into the election results. This was on December 4th, right before the final certification. This was done by the elections, apparently done by the elections group, based on email exchange between Richard Barron and Ryan Macias. So he just turned it over to them, and then somehow magically it all balanced out. And if you remember, the elections group was funded by the Center for Technology and Civic Life. That's Mark Zuckerberg's organization. He spent $330 million to essentially buy the 2020 election. Georgia got $45 million of those dollars, and the criteria for getting that was to have unsecure drop boxes, funding of unsecured drop boxes, outdoor drop boxes, partisan get out the vote efforts, and then that when 94% of the money went to counties won by Joe Biden, and then free technical services to help count the votes and produce the results. That's pretty scary stuff. So fortunately, the legislature has banned private money here in Georgia. We don't have to worry about that again. One last thing or two on this election. We found that roughly 1 million electronic ballot records are missing. Now, I told you about these three, but in addition, what we call the SHA files, which are the secure hash algorithm files that identify the ballot images, they were missing for those 17,852. And not only were the results backfilled for the original count, but they appear to be backfilled for the recount as well, to the tune of 16,198. That's what it looks like for us. 380,458 missing original in-person ballot images. I don't think there's any dispute about that they have not been able to produce those. And in fairness to Fulton County, we found over 1.7 million original ballot images missing statewide in our ORA survey. So they are not the only county who has failed to deliver their in-person original ballot images. And then finally, about a total of another 512,000 missing original SHA image authentication files. So you add all that up. Remember, Fulton County cast, I think it was about 524 or 528,000 ballots cast in Fulton County. So there's multiple electronic records for each one. So yeah, when I said 1 million electronic ballot records are missing, I really mean that. So the last thing I want to say about the 2020 election is, if you don't believe anything that I have said today, which I think you do, but if you don't, you can just look at the Secretary of State's own Clarity election results from the morning after the election. This is about 10 a.m. And it shows that all the counties had reported, all 158 counties had reported, except for Fulton, the 159th. And in Fulton, you can see here from this drawing that there were 13 precincts left to count. That was all that was left to count. That's 13 precincts is maybe 10,000 votes, give or take. Let's say it was 20. But at this point in time, at 10 o'clock the morning after the election, Donald Trump had an insurmountable 101,000 vote lead, and David Perdue 78,500 over the runoff margin, with 10,000 votes or so left to count, maybe 20, according to the Secretary of State's own reporting. And this is consistent with what he said when he went on to NBC Today in the 2 hours before this, and he said with 98% was reported. There was only, I think, at that time, 94,000 votes left to count, 2%, and it would not change the results. He told NBC Today that in the interview, you may have seen that, we've played that clip quite a few times before. I see some heads nodding. And so this corroborates what he said. This is not something we've just pulled out of the wall. It's actually very consistent with what he told NBC Today. So, okay, that's 2020 elections, but Rob, Chairman Pitts wanted to comment on 2024 as well.
We had successful elections in 2024. We just recently, 2 days ago, had another successful election, but they just cannot, for whatever reason, let 2020 go.
You're right. We're not going to let 2020 go until we find out the truth, Chairman Pitts, whatever it takes. So let's look at Chairman Pitts' successful election in 2024. Here's Philip Davis's ballot integrity analysis. Philip is a 30-year career image analyst. There is no greater expert in the country on the Georgia ballots than Philip Davis. He has analyzed this to a degree. He has already looked at 2024, and he found out nearly 13,000 ballots were rescanned on certification day. Why would you be rescanning ballots? Nobody voted on certification day. Ballots are scanned when the voter votes. That would be either early voting or an election day, or as you're processing the absentee ballots. All of that is done, in theory, particularly in a small election like this, by election day, or maybe even the day after, giving them a little bit of break. But to scan 13,000 ballots on certification day, and for Chairman Pitts to say that that is successful, that doesn't meet anyone's definition of success anywhere. So to sum all this up, we have experienced the greatest voting rights violation in Georgia history. Why do I say that? Fulton County has blocked evidence of election crimes from being exposed here for 5 years. The evidence clearly shows that not just Georgians, but Americans had their votes diluted in the 2020 federal election in Georgia, particularly in Fulton County and elsewhere around the country. What you've seen here is that we, the voters, are victims of a double standard of justice based on political agendas of judges or other maybe pressure they're receiving. Whatever that is, they're willing to compromise the rule of law for whatever it is that's controlling them. Some puppeteer who is out there pulling strings in on these judges. And now we've seen the media outlets have been complicit in allowing this cover-up to continue. Today we feature Fox 5 and Deidre Dukes. It could have, AJC has been notorious for years about false reporting of our elections. I've even mentioned before that they falsely reported that our case was dismissed. That journalist is now gone, and a new journalist has made an article similar to what Fox 5 has here, trying to save Fulton County and Chairman Pitts from actual accountability, which is what every voter in this Georgia, the state deserves, regardless of what your political party affiliation is. Anyone should be able to see ballots, and they can count them up themselves if they want, because we have to know that the elections are legitimate. So that said, I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to flip it back to Tamara, and I think she's got a couple things to say, and then we're back for Q&A.
Wow, you have to take a deep breath after that one, huh? So let's just talk a little bit about Voter GA. We are a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit, and all donations are tax deductible, and that's what we live off of. Garland and I are both volunteers. We don't take any salary out of Voter GA. In fact, we're both donors to it. And we have no employees, so we're able to keep the overhead low. As you can probably tell from this presentation, most of our funds are spent on litigation. We have 5 active lawsuits. You saw 2 of the most infamous ones today, the Fulton County counterfeit ballot case, which, as you see, we have been fighting it now for almost 5 years and still have not seen the ballots. Just 2 weeks ago, we filed an emergency petition with the U.S. Election Assistance Commission to vacate the Dominion 5.5A certification because it was not legitimately certified back in 2019, and it's not secure to be used for our 2026 elections coming up in just a few short months. Now, technically, this is not litigation, at least not yet, but we are working with attorneys, so we are incurring cost. I'm proud to say that we're able to keep the legal cost as low as possible, although that's relative when you're talking about litigation. But it's because Garland does so much of the work before we hand it off to the attorneys. We also have several other projects that we do to support and spread the message of needed election reform. Education for voters, legislators, poll watchers, press conferences like this, free expert witness testimony both here in Georgia and nationally. And we intend to keep leading the fight nationally in support of President Trump's election executive order and any future orders that we expect that he will issue, because we do believe that's our best hope for resolving our American security crisis around these elections, and we need it solved before the 2026 elections. So in order to encourage donations so we can continue to fight like we do, we have designed this limited edition of Make Election Great Again apparel, and we give them as gifts for donations. So these items that you see here on the screen are not available for sale, and they're only available here. Now remember, Christmas is coming, so this is an opportunity to both donate to Voter GA and get your Christmas shopping done at the same time. The website to receive the apparel for donations is live now. You just go to voterga.org to the Donate tab, and you'll see this graphic, and you click on it, and it'll take you to the website with all of the apparel. And while you're at our website, go over to the Volunteer tab and sign up to receive an invitation to our weekly Saturday morning election integrity update Zoom call. That way you can get the latest on what's happening in election integrity. Thank you for considering a donation for Voter GA. So now let's take some questions. Garland?
All right, thanks. We'll start with Earl. We'll get to them. Oh, yeah, I'm
yeah.
sorry. Let me just make sure we don't have any media questions in the chat. And And let me see, I think, Tanya, are you monitoring the X chat? Okay, you're going to let us know if we have something back there.
Yeah, I don't have any
Okay,
at this
so
moment.
let's just go ahead and we'll start with Earl and then we'll go to the back. So.
My turn? Okay.
Yeah, you got to use a mic.
Oh, Michael.
Right.
That's
We
why
want
you
to record.
Tapping me on the shoulder. I'm being heard. I can't.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I'm have to sit down.
Okay, that's okay.
At last week's state election board meeting, it was sort of announced without all the details that the lawsuit that had been filed against them for freedom of information failure had been settled. It was not said how the settlement was, but the rumor is that the state is paying $50,000 to the plaintiffs in that suit. How is it that something like that coming from an outsider gets prompt and generous resolution when the Freedom of Information actions that you have filed are ignored?
Okay, well, thank you, Earl. So that's a different lawsuit, but to your point, Judge McBurney has handled several election lawsuits, run them right through the court, in and out, and while he sat on ours for 2 years. And this is why I say this is political. It's who's going to be heard is political. Let's go to the back, and then we'll go back, come up to where.
So just for some clarification, the 15 days that Fulton County had to do the ballots, have we passed the 15 days?
Yes.
15 business days? So what is the next step there, and can we get more
Yes.
push from the DOJ?
Very good point. So we did have this today because the 15th day was Friday, and it is calendar days. It's not business days. So what is the next step is really going to be up to the DOJ. We can't anticipate what they might say or do. We're going to continue. I can only tell you what our next steps are, and we are going to pursue this case as best we can. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. We think they have the counterfeit ballot case. The judges sat on that so long that the motions we have to replace the board members with the new board members. And we have a motion before him to replace the original board members, or actually there was already replaced board members because it's been 5 years. And because we've already replaced them once, and then every time they change, we have to replace them again. And he sat on that one for 2 years, hasn't ruled on it. And now we have another motion we're going to have to file because the board's changed again. So, and then each time we file a motion, they're going to want to say, oh, motion to dismiss, drag it out. So this could go on for some time. The open records request, though, is a little bit more straightforward. They're going to probably have to deal with that one in a more timely manner. But then they're going to try to say, we'll give you your ballots, but it's going to cost you $200,000. So, whereas our argument is going to be, look, you violated the law, give us a copy for free. So that's probably about.
Is there anything we can do to push the DOJ, any place we can go to say, is there anything proactive we can do to help?
Yeah. Is there anything proactive that the folks can do to help?
Well, there is an Attorney General hotline.
Right. There's Attorney
You
General
can send
hotline we could
comments.
talk about. We could contact the Fulton County. I would like everybody to show up at the next Fulton County Board of Commissioners meeting and tell them how ridiculous it is there. I know we have folks in the room that go down there all the time. So that might be another alternative. And I'll keep thinking about that. And while we're taking questions, let's go to Ware and then we'll come to Kevin. Well, actually, maybe it might be easier to get to Kevin and then to Ware. We'll get you.
Just one quick one. The commissioners meeting is this Wednesday, and it's as easy to do comments. You can do them online. You can do them Zoom. You can get on Actually, you get online through the BOC, and they call on you, and you give your comments online. It's simple.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. That's great. And we need to get that link out so everybody can do that.
Well, Garland, there was an interesting Steve Bannon war room when Steve said, well, in Fulton County, why doesn't the Justice Department send a couple of marshals down there with a couple of axes and go in there, knock down the door, and get the ballots? And Ed Martin, who was being interviewed by Bannon at the time, said, Steve, I don't believe those ballots are there. I think that those ballots were destroyed a long time ago. And so all of this delay and obfuscation and all that is because the ballots are not there. Because if they were there, people would be going to jail. And they are not going to release that. So we hope that Harmy Dillon, and we hope that Ed Martin, and we hope Justice does something about this. And in this discussion here, has been like focused on Fulton County, but it's much more than that. This is all about the compromised governor, the coward attorney general, and the criminal secretary of state. And they have done nothing to convince the voters that 2020 was actually free and fair.
And in fact, there's more and more, as you watch the polls now, 2/3 of America is concerned, that includes Georgia, about whether or not there will be corruption in the 2026 election and vote manipulation, which proves your point. I was going to comment on one of the things that you said, but I'll come back to it. John, go ahead.
So we seem to be having a problem with judges in Georgia, McBurney being maybe the greatest problem there. Is there any grounds for impeachment on these judges because they delay and never bring justice?
As far as I know, under Georgia law, a judge can just delay indefinitely, either in state or federal court. I'm not aware of any law that requires them to have to hear a case in a timely manner. So our hands are tied, and that delayed justice is no justice at all. Delayed justice is injustice, I think, as the saying goes. So I think Scott had a question over here.
What we're witnessing is misrepresentation of facts, fraud, subversion of law. These are racketeering activities and subversive activities and fraud. We have a suit, ones I'm involved with, Gwinnett County, Hall County, Cherokee County's coming on board. We've been going around and joining counties with that's having problems as well. So we're building a coalition. But what I wanted to ask was, didn't the Supreme Court make a ruling to release the ballots?
Yes. So let's go back and look at that, Scott. Thank you, because I didn't quite make that clear. When the Georgia Supreme Court ruled us and gave us standing back in 2022, boy, that's a lot of slides back there, that reactivated the original unseal order. So once that decision was made, the ballots were unsealed again. This is why we've been trying to get them, and I forgot to put that on the slide, and thank you for bringing that up.
So a gentleman said there was a problem with the judge, the Superior Court judge. The problem's all the way to the Supreme Court. The justices they won't even enforce their judgments, so that which would fall back on Christopher M. Carr, or the Kemp. He's the executive officer to do this. So we're having problems with our suits getting through, and it comes down to ministerial functions. They're not performing, and that is an impeachable offense, and that's how we're moving in our suits. And to your comment about like delayed justice, judges not taking action. If you look up OCGA 15-6-21, counties with over 100,000 inhabitants, a judge has 3 months to take action and make a ruling. If not, he's removed. He can be removed by and impeached.
All right, thank you, Scott. And in regards to Ware's point about the ballots, we don't really know if they are still there or not. I mean, they might be gone. As it's a no-win situation for Fulton County if you, because of the obvious potential criminal activity that was involved in the 2020 election, which we can document even without the ballots through electronic records. They're in a no-win situation. If they produce the ballots, it's going to show, as Ware said, some of the people may end up in jail, but if they destroy them, somebody might end up in jail too. So they're in a no-win situation, so the best they can do is just keep delaying, and this is why we've had 5 years of protectionism for what happened in 2020. It's just to try to delay and hope that we're going to go away. We are not going to go away until we see those ballots. Okay, Victoria's there.
Yes, Garland. I think what we're all worried about, what I'm really worried about, is that some of the elected officials who are involved in this cover-up are running for higher office. And this is frightening to me because we also have open primaries. And I was just looking on X, and Data Republican put out something about open primaries and how they were used by Democrats to defeat Madison Cawthorn. That's how, even though he was so popular, he lost his bid for re-election. And they were able to push Raffensperger over the 50% mark to avoid a runoff in the 2022 primary. So I have no expectation that we'll see anything different. Can we get the primaries closed in Georgia? Is that something that can be effected before the May primaries?
So, not being a Democrat or Republican, that question is probably outside of my scope.
Well,
so,
I can tell you that we do know that it is a priority for the GOP, the state GOP, to get that legislation passed.
So it could happen. I mean, would it be a simple thing? Would it be, okay, the legislation is passed and then they're closed? Does that happen
immediately? I don't know the answer to that. If they pass it in this next session.
Yeah. We're just trying to get some honest elections.
Right.
And transparent, because you mentioned Secretary Ravensburg in the 2022 primary. He was polling, as you mentioned, 18 to 39%. The day before the election, he gets 51% on election day, and then refuses to show us a single ballot, refuses to audit a single race, and the only race that was actually audited was the DeKalb District 2 primary, which found out the voting system produced the wrong winners. Mm-hmm. So the Dominion system had a 0% accuracy rate in the 2022 primary for elections that were, primary elections for candidate races.
Okay, well that kind of transitions into my second question, which is the presidential executive order asked the EAC to basically, I guess, decertify the, or require that all machines meet the 2.0, VVSG 2.0 qualifying standards. Okay, I'm not sure they're going to do that, but what impact does the Smartmatic lawsuit and Smartmatic whistleblower, the one who was in Tina Peters' appeal case, what effect would that have on forcing the EAC's hand to decertify, and then also to help you forward, you have a decertification request. Does the Smartmatic whistleblower being given any credence at all?
Well, this is a really good question. It's a little bit off of our subject, but it's a really good question. So what we did, we think will force the hand of the EAC to do something, and that was to file the complaint to vacate the original certification. And to vacate the original certification is because the system never met the original certification guidelines in 2019 because its encryption keys are stored in clear plain text and the passwords don't even meet 1985 criteria, which we showed in our press conference. I think y'all were here just 2 weeks ago. So what we're going to try to do, as you point out, this is it's a multifaceted situation, which a lot of different branches to go down on that question. But as you said, the president has ordered the decertification of the Dominion system and recertify, not just Dominion, of all this voting systems, because ES&S has a QR-coded voting system, which is as bad as this Democracy Suite 5. So he's ordered that all of them be decertified and recertified according to the new standards. EAC is upgrading their standards for 2.1 because 2.0 was not clear enough that banned the QR codes altogether. So they're redoing their standards. But to your point, EAC is it's a very cumbersome process, which is lots of red tape. Nothing's going to get done fast. So we decided, based on the evidence of the September 30th, 2024 case in DeKalb County, experts Clay Parikh and Ben Cotton testimony, unrefuted, using an authenticated copy of the Georgia server. So we filed our petition or our complaint to pressure them to immediately ban or vacate the certification. And if they can't do that immediately, they do have authority to immediately postpone the certification and take it out to 27 while they're vacating it. So that is our petition. It's in play. Now the question is, what if they don't respond? Well, if they don't respond in a timely manner, we'll go to federal admin court and try to get an emergency petition to basically nail the coffin shut on this corrupt, unverifiable voting system for 2026. So that's what we, I think, plan to do. And I can announce today that we have had, I believe, 6 states join us in that petition, and they will be they have filed their own petitions, individuals in those 6 states with different versions of the Democracy Suite system, all of which have the same problems, which ever since 4.0, and they are joining, and they will file additional petitions on the EAC, and that's going to increase the pressure even further. So I think Janelle had one, and then we'll go to Jenny. That was a great question. That was a tough question. That was a good one.
I keep thinking that speedy trial thing, everyone has a right to a speedy trial.
The Fifth Amendment? I think it's Fifth Amendment, isn't it?
Where did that go? It's somewhere buried down in Fulton County. But there's this little pile of people who are in Fulton County on the south side who are controlling the entirety of Georgia. I don't feel like Georgia has any civil rights at all. We don't have our voting rights. We have nothing. The lawfare and the lies are going to kill Georgia. And I'm hoping that we are joined by D.C. once more, or 10 times more if that's what it takes, to get those civil rights back. Do you think they'll help us?
Yes, I do. So first of all, to your first point, Fulton County represents 10% of the votes in Georgia. And you can control an election with Fulton County alone, particularly if you added DeKalb in, that would be really good. But Fulton is a huge factor, and they can control, just like Fairfax County in Virginia can control a lot of results up there. and Maricopa in Arizona. But yes, I do believe that both the civil and criminal divisions of the DOJ are going to do something. What? I can't tell you because I'm not privy to that. But they wouldn't be doing this, what they've done so far, if they had no plan of action. So I think that is an encouraging thing to know that they were on it. Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to go back to Jenny. I think she had a question in the back, and then we'll see if we have any more. Otherwise, we'll wrap up.
Well, it's really not a question. It's giving some history where we're from, St. Louis area. When we moved here, I thought we had run away from the mob in Chicago. And we lived in Chicago for a while. And so we're not unfamiliar with how the mob runs things, but I'm still trying to figure out how, and the politicians, I guess, took lessons from the mob and how they made money controlling elections, because they seem to be doing it all over the country. It's not just Georgia. So I really wonder if we couldn't get some press coverage out of that at some point, because, you know, Trump's running across all this too. You know, I mean, they're strong out there.
Yeah, so Tamara said the same thing when she left California. She came here, and but it is like organized crime. Sometimes, you know, even organized crime have some kind of ethics, but I probably shouldn't go there. So, yes, sir. We have a question in the back.
I'm just wondering, we have, you know, you hear the news, the story's always, Trump hasn't won one of these election lawsuits. He claims the thing was stolen across the country. Nearly 100 cases been filed. None. He hasn't won any. Well, your example, right, is that they don't ever make it to court. They never get decided.
Right.
So my question is, do you know any across the country out of the number of suits that would be of significance? I just read another story on Michigan right now. Do you know any that have been decided or that we've won, or they could say they actually that were lost?
Well, there's dozens of cases. I mean, I think that the president got favorable rulings. In our case, I mean, we won a case in the Georgia Supreme Court. Now, the president was not directly involved in the case, so they don't give him, you know, credit, you know. So, but we're still going on. They keep dragging it out, so we can't declare a victory because it's still in progress. But we do have 5 cases in progress for the 2020 and 2022 elections. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
From the standpoint, if we had a win, if you would say, okay, you know, he had some favorable rulings, my question is, was the election overturned then? Was it corrected? Georgia, what I saw up there in your numbers is, if everything was validated, well then Biden didn't win Georgia, Trump did. And I never hear any declaration that says, no, Arizona or no, Michigan or Wisconsin was actually won.
Yeah, well, there, you know, in fairness, there's a massive effort to prevent the American people from knowing the truth about the 2020 election in multiple states, all of the battleground states.
We thought Pravda was bad when I was growing up. Pravda's worse right here.
Yeah, and there's any more questions? Looks like Ware's got one more. While we're getting up to Ware, if you want to know whether the 2020 election results were right, just, you know, since you mentioned President Trump, he claimed that he was cheated out of 5 states in the 2020 election: Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. He won those in 2016. Now, if there's any doubt as to whether or not the 2020 election was legitimate or not, it should have been resolved in 2024 because he won all 5 of those states that he claimed that he was cheated out of in 2020, and he won them in 2016. That would tell any average person who could think logically that the 2020 election was stolen. But we're still trying to live under this lie.
On the flip side, they use the fact that there really hasn't been any decision like that to say that, it's a coup, there are election deniers, because there's nothing being overturned.
Right, and you're right, and the reason why they are still able to ridicule some of us is because of corrupt judges. Corrupt judges are probably the single biggest problem in America right now, so I found out.
Well, Garland's saying all hello? Garland?
Yes.
Saying all of that. What the big picture is, yes, we had the executive order, but the executive order is just a suggestion. So it has to be a national emergency on elections for that to have any impact across the country at all. And the question is, from everything that you see out there, do you think that that is a possibility? Because 26 is going to be a very big year when it comes to holding on to the House of Representatives. And if we have the criminality across these battleground states, then it may be very, very difficult for the Republicans to hold the House. So as a libertarian, I mean.
Well, not being a Republican is that, but but to your point about the election executive order, I think we just have to. So we're in a national security crisis. We have it's not just Georgia; it's a national election security crisis. And I would just say, stay tuned. If we hear that the president's going to be holding a press conference in the next couple of weeks, I think I wouldn't want to miss it.
I have just a couple quick questions.
Okay, Tamara.
From Rumble. So one is about certification. It's technical. If you'll just explain why the voluntary voting systems guideline is not voluntary.
Right. It is voluntary as long as you don't want your system certified. The voluntary voting system guidelines are voluntary. But if you want a certified system, then it has to comply with the voluntary voting system guidelines. So to give you the example, in our case in 2019, the EAC certified the Dominion Democracy 5.5 system based on the voluntary voting system guidelines. Georgia law requires EAC certification. It didn't used to. So you could comply with the voluntary voting system guidelines or not. But the EAC certified it, so what the EAC is doing is saying it met the voluntary voting system guidelines in 2005. Well, the voluntary voting system guidelines in 2005 were based on 1985 password standards and 1994 encryption key standards, which the Dominion system did not meet. It does not meet. That's a matter of unrefuted expert witness testimony. So therefore, it did not meet the certification in 2005 and 2019. Didn't meet the 2005 guidelines, wasn't legitimately certified in 2019. We want to vacate that certification. We don't want to decertify it because it was never certified legitimately the first time. We want to say that certification never was legitimate whatsoever. Vacate it. Let's don't pretend it was certified for 5 or 6 years when it wasn't.
Okay. Next question and last question.
Okay.
If it's determined that the 2020 ballots have been destroyed, do you think there are consequences? It's a hard question.
Are there consequences if the 2020 ballots are destroyed? I think that the consequences would have to be federally because it's obvious that no Fulton County judge is going to rule against Fulton County in a big way in which would need to be done. So my guess is the consequences would probably have to be federal. That would be my guess. speculation.
Good. That's all here.
All right. I think we're going to wrap there. We went a little bit over, but we had some fabulous questions. Thank everybody for attending today. Again, just want to remind the folks who are going to watch this, we are all volunteers. We're able to do this because of your donations around the country that helps keep us alive. We are volunteers, both Tamara and I, and all this money is very expensive. The litigation and the dragging of the feet has basically escalated our costs. So if you watch this from another state, we will need your help, and thank you so much. So many of you have already contributed, and that's why we're able to do what we do today. So thanks for joining. Oh,
Let's not
and
forget
I
about
almost
Tina.
forgot, we have one more thing that we have to do to close today, and this is incredibly important. And I'm going to let Tamara close this out. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yes, we cannot talk about the 2020 elections and not mention Tina Peters. She is an American political prisoner. And let that sink in. There should be no political prisoners in America. She is a 70-year-old lung cancer survivor, Gold Star mom, a grandmother who was the Mesa County, Colorado clerk in charge of all of the elections. She exposed problems with the 2020 elections, and they prosecuted her for it. They sentenced her to 9 years in prison, and the most ridiculous thing is that she was denied bond. So on October 3rd of last year, she was literally shackled in the courtroom and drug off to prison, where she sits today. It was a victimless crime. She had no prior record. This is almost unprecedented. Normally it's murderers that are denied bond while their case is on appeal. She now is very sick. She has some severe lung problems. And so we need to get her out of there. We know that the DOJ has tried to investigate Colorado. We don't know if Colorado has given them all the records they've requested, but things are not happening quickly enough. So you see up here on the screen a telephone number to call the Attorney General's office. There's also a phone number for the White House. You can call there, or you can go to whitehouse.gov and there's a contact form and you can fill it out. It's really simple. For the president, you could just say, please, Mr. President, free Tina Peters. She was just doing her job. She should not be in prison. So please, I'd ask all of our viewers online, if you're watching this later, also please call both these numbers or go to the White House website. It's very important that she get out of there.
Or all three.
So yeah, do all three, as a matter of fact. And this was the phone number when somebody asked, is there something we can do to motivate the DOJ to continue with Fulton County? This phone number that you see up here for the AG's office would be the number to call to ask them to please continue to pressure Fulton County to see those ballots and all the other records that the DOJ has requested. So with that, let's go to prayer for Tina. Father God, we know that you are a good God and that you are a just God. No matter what circumstances look like, we know that you have a plan and that you have a purpose. And Father, we lift up Tina to you right now. I just speak healing over her body. Your word says that by Jesus' stripes, we are healed. So I declare that over her. And Father, we saw the story in the New Testament that Peter, while the people were praying and he was praising your name, that the doors were opened to that jail. And Father, I just ask the same thing over Tina right now. Whether it comes from the president or the DOJ, we ask you, Lord, just move quickly to get her released. And we thank you for what you are doing. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you. Burn that AG office hotline up.
Yes.